Language and vocabulary around LGBTQ identities can be really confusing, but here are some basics to help you better understand the LGBTQ community at AU.
First, we'll look at the difference between sex and gender.
Sex is a category assigned at birth that is based on genitalia, chromosomes, hormones, and other sex characteristics. The categories we usually think about when we talk about sex are male and female, but in addition there's also intersex, which is a term that is used for people who are born genitalia, chromosomes, hormones, and or even like the other characteristics that differ from the expected traits of males and females.
Gender is socially constructed by people, culture, and society. Gender identity is a self-defined category that we select for ourselves.
It is an internal sense of self that we develop from an early age. The categories we normally think about when we talk about gender are men and women, but these are just two of the many categories that people may identify their gender with.
Gender expression is the way that we express our gender.
It is the way our gender is externally and socially perceived by those around us. The way people talk, dress, walk, interact with others, style their hair, or express their emotions as well.
The terms we generally think of when we talk about gender expression are masculinity, femininity, and androgyny.
Society has certain expectations for how people should express their genders and whether people should be masculine or feminine. For example, men are expected to wear pants and shorts, but not dresses or skirts, while women are expected to shave their legs or wear makeup.
Women are expected to be feminine and men are expected to be masculine.
Sometimes LGBTQ people can't or don't meet society's expectations for what their gender should look like.
This can lead to bullying, discrimination, and harassment.
Now that we've talked about sex and gender, we can talk about sexual orientation.
Sexual orientation is an identity that describes people's sexual, romantic, or emotional attraction.
Sexual orientation is not just who you are or aren't dating or haven't had sex with.
People's behaviors, fantasies, thoughts, desires, or lack thereof all play into a person's sexual orientation.
There are countless identities that people use to describe their sexual orientation or gender identity. People may identify with one term or with many different terms.
Here are just a few of the terms people may use to describe themselves.
Lesbian is a word that typically is used to describe women who feel attracted to other women.
Gay is a term typically used by men who are attracted to other men. But it is also a term that can be used by people of other gender identities to express their sexual orientation.
For example, some women who feel attracted to women may refer themselves as gay women as opposed to lesbian women.
Gay has also been used as an umbrella term, which means it's been used to describe the LGBTQ community as a whole. But we're slowly moving away from this.
Using LGBTQ+, LGBT, or any other form of similar variations when referring to the whole community is what we strive for.
Another term to describe the LGBT community is queer.
Queer can also be used to describe someone who is attracted to multiple genders. However, some people also use it as a political statement to advocate breaking away from binary thinking.
Queer is still used very negatively sometimes towards LGBTQ people. So not all LGBTQ people appreciate hearing or using the word.
Isn't that pretty much the same as bisexual or pansexual?
Similar, but no.
The word bisexual has been used to describe people who are attracted to both men and women.
Pansexual, on the other hand, is an identity term typically used to describe people who are attracted to a multitude of gender identities and expressions.
What about folks who don't experience sexual or romantic attraction?
That's a good question.
Asexual is typically used to describe someone who doesn't feel sexual attraction.
While aromantic is used to describe people who don't feel romantic attraction.
Transgender is an identity word that typically refers to people who identify with a different gender than the one that they were assigned at birth.
A trans man is someone who is assigned female at birth but identifies as a man. A trans woman is a person who is assigned the male gender or sex at birth and identifies as a woman.
Cisgender refers to people who identify with the sex that they were given at birth.
Other gender identities that people may identify with include non-binary, genderqueer, and agender.
While all these identities sound very similar, they are actually really different, and we should respect the identities that people choose for themselves.
Non-binary is typically used to describe someone who doesn't identify or as exclusively typically associated with masculine or feminine.
Genderqueer is a term typically used to describe someone whose identity is outside of, not within, or beyond the gender binary.
Agender is typically used by someone not identifying with any gender.
Lastly, we're going to discuss pronouns.
Pronouns refer to the words that replace someone's name in a sentence when you're talking about that person.
Pronouns is another part of our identity in which people usually don't take it very seriously if they assume what someone's pronouns are.
Though many people do use pronouns like she, her, hers, and he, him, his, those are just two of the numerous pronouns that are out there.
Some people use they, them, and their pronouns, which by the way are completely acceptable to use in the singular. Other people may use sie, here, hers, or they might just use their name instead of any pronouns at all.
Oftentimes when you meet someone, your gut reaction might be to say, he seems really cool. But unless they told you that they specifically use he, him, his pronouns, you would have no way of knowing.
That person might actually go by sie, here, or hers, which means the proper response would have been sie seemed really cool.
Overall, don't assume someone's pronouns just based on how they look.
And always use the pronouns that someone wants you to use for them. A safe bet is to always use they, them, and theirs if you don't know someone's pronouns.
We wanted to give you some basic definitions so you had somewhere to start.
It's important to recognize that this video itself doesn't really define every LGBTQ+ experience, and everyone has their own experience.
Every LGBTQ person has a unique identity and a unique way of understanding themselves through these words.
Some may use the same definitions that we've used in this video, and others may have completely different meanings for them, and that's okay.
The most important thing to remember is to always let people self-define.
You probably still have questions, and that's cool.
CDI has 2 workshops you can still attend, Safe Space and Trans 101.
Also, please feel free to reach out to the LGBTQ peer educators, which is in the Center for Diversity and Inclusion.
Or stop by the center to learn more.